Going to start the Operations and Planning Committee meeting January 13, 2021 at 2:30. We're going to call this to order. The invocation will be by Mr. Amos Berry, the Pledge of Allegiance by Mr. Sam Johnson.
Let us pray. Oh, Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this beautiful day that you allow us to come here and assemble together to do the business of the Solid Waste Authority. Lord, I sit here today with my heart heavy, losing a good friend yesterday, lost another one this morning, Lord. Just ask you to lift up the Gore family in their time of sorrow and grief, and lift up the Strickland family and their sorrow and grief that they're going through. And we thank you, Lord, again for everything you do for us. In Jesus' name, amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I need to get an approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Everyone in favor say aye. Aye. The approval has been made. The first thing that we're going to discuss is the road. Well, before I get into that, the staff has told me that it seems like DHEC has allowed us to know that there's a lot of COVID, and for everyone to please wear your mask even when you're speaking. Is that not what we were told? So if you would do that, we would appreciate it. The road and the 1187 Barrow area project update, Mr. Beza.
Well, let me get my pointer here. I wanted to first show y'all the property and what's been done up to this time. As you can see, this is the area that was first cleared on the property here. So this is the road coming in from the Murrah, right in this area. So if you would start it. I'll try to give y'all, and this is, King has got this cleared, and this will be a bar pit area. Our drone would only go 2.25 miles out from the landfill, so you can see the existing road. Come on. Go up there with it. Yep, there it is. That's what they call the Beaver Dam property over there. They've got the roadway cleared all the way back to the landfill. So this gives you an idea of what it is, and it also, now they had to go in there with the logger trucks, the Franklin loggers, so you're gonna see a lot of water in the ruts over the rain. This was taken yesterday, yesterday afternoon, so it's gonna have some water and stuff in the ruts in the road. So this will give you an idea of exactly what has been completed to date. Thought a good aerial drone would be, this thing's about 5 minutes long. You can also see the piles of stumps where they cleared and grubbed the roadway, and they've got those up, and every so often they'll burn those. We are having burning over there a lot. We've got a couple calls, thought the place was on fire over there, but it's because it's burning those stumps. You'll see this area here, which is a wetland crossing that we got permitted to cross. Over in the left-hand side of the picture, way over here, we see this red mark. You see it when it turns up here. You'll be able to see that that is what's called Clear Pond. That's a big subdivision. They're looking at expanding that thing even closer to the landfill. I didn't realize there were so many homes in there till the other day. Danny and I went and rode around. You can see that whole area over there is nothing but homes. Good old County development. You can really see where it runs, as Sterrett Swamp is, and from where it begins to the back of the end's about 2.5 miles.
There's a lot of white in there that actually looks like it would be water until you get up to it, and then you see that that's trees
Sand.
or sand, the white sand in there.
That's an upland, this road's running along the upland, so this is a real sandy area. If you look right there, that's a lot of sand right there. That's
Okay.
water and that's sand. Ruts in the
Okay.
sand. You know, you have some areas that's wetter than others. We got real wide areas, it's sand.
Okay.
So right here is where the bridge will cross. Right through here, about 630 feet through there. Then we're coming up onto the side on the landfill. That's where the roadway network is going from here and up. Have it pretty well filled to here, already completed. They have it rocked to about right up here. And they were rocking today, they're down into here now. As far as the rocking of it. Anyone got any questions? Project?
How many linear feet of roadway have been cleared thus far?
All of it has been cleared.
All of it has.
Except for the bridge network.
It's about 3 mile network.
About 2.5, about 2.5, 2.25 miles. So it's that's the whole network has been cleared. So the roadway is cleared. So there won't be any more clearing as far as roadway. Now there will be some clearing related to the stormwater ponds or the pits that we'll be digging to take the dirt out. That first part of it that you saw will become a pit. And when you go across that first wetland, next part will be a pit as well. So, those pits will be made as they come back.
Will there be any additional clearing for the bridge right away?
Sorry?
Will there be any additional clearing for the bridge right away?
Yes, there'll be a 40-foot, when I showed you through the area that was the bridge, they'll be cutting a 40-foot right away through there. They're gonna take all the trees out from the bridge. It can only go 40 foot in width. We've also awarded the second project, which is the filling of the pit. The filling of this pit here. We've awarded that, signed the contracts on it, and now that's on the move, being started. Awarded that contract to King Construction, he was the low responsive bidder. So, we're dealing with one contractor throughout the thing, which I think there's some pluses to that. Anything you want to ask, Greg? You can see in your packet, we got you listed out there what we had and where we at on it, sort of updated it. To this point, the project's run well. So we're moving right along, even with all the rain we've had. We continue to be able to work and make things move forward. I think we've done a real good job compared to the amount of rain we've had this month.
They have had some rain days, I would imagine, that they can.
But they can see what counts for a rain day is if they don't work more than, if they work 4 hours, it's not count.
Correct. They've had 5 recognized rain days to date, which is built into the contract, so they're not doing the extension yet. And I'll just reflect what Mike said. Conditions have been very difficult, but the product has turned out very good, and we're still on schedule. Very pleased with progress.
Okay, because with it wet and everything, I wouldn't want to continue working and it not be at the best level we could have.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, we're probably not as far along as we would like to be on the 1187 part of it, but on the, because it has stopped some logging issues that we've had, or it was just too wet to log, those kind of things. But, you know, if it'll give us a week, week and a half, no rain, or little rain, we can get back over and start working. But it is holding that up, but they're working on other areas, and they just putting everything they can over here. And they have rock part of the road on the other side as well. So they are definitely trying to work when it's about, when it can work. Any questions?
Okay.
So the next thing on this one?
Is the landfill gas project presentation?
Yeah, I want to introduce Mr. Chris Carlson. He's with Carlson Environmental. He's the guy that helps us manage our gas system here. And he's going to do a presentation. We started early on, and I don't want to take none of his steam about the project, but I'm going to let him explain the project to you. We've been working on it for a while. So, to get more gas out of the landfill and reduce others. So Chris is going to explain the project to you and go from there.
Thanks, Mike. Well, good afternoon, everybody. So again, I'm Chris Carlson with CEC, and so we've been working with you guys in some capacity since 1999. So been here a while. And again, our project for this fiscal is an expansion of the gas collection and control system. So go ahead and get the next slide. So I want to give you kind of a 30,000-foot view of what you have out there right now. So essentially 80 vertical gas wells kind of split between the Sub D Hill and the West Hill. We've got an open flare. We've got 3 gen sets, and these are owned by C&T Cooper that takes the gas and uses it and makes beneficial use. We're getting about 700 SCFM right now out of the landfill. And our last system expansion was in fiscal 2018, and we're on the end of our 3-year cycle. And so this is the time to do the expansion. We have budgeted for a site like Horry County to do a major expansion every 3 years. The site is not regulatory required to have a gas system, that's one thing to point out. So we're doing it on a basis that's non-regulatory, right? And we're doing it on the basis to take gas and again get it to the C&T Cooper plant. So the authority was one of the first sites, I think, in the whole state to have gone this route. It's probably the largest landfill gas system in the state that's not required by the regs. Now, we're going to be testing later on, I guess in December of this year, to determine whether or not we are going to continue to be non-regulatory required. And if that fails, so if that test comes back and says, yes, your time is up, then the earliest this site could be required to have a gas system would be in the summer of 2024. So we have several years away to get ourselves ready, and these 3 to 2 year expansion intervals are intended to continue to move us down that path. Now, everything we do.
Explain to them what federal requirements does on Title V, if you're required to have one, what other measures you have to do.
Okay, so everything we do right now, I would consider it to be on par with any landfill that is required. So you're already doing everything, right? All the gas system components, the flare station, the technicians are monitoring it per the requirements. Everything we do. What we're not doing is, again, the extra level of there are certain time periods in which you have to continue to monitor, you have to fix things, and those have additional costs. And it's actually a significant cost to both operations staff and probably the equipment materials you have to buy. So you take maybe the cost you spend right now and times 7 or 8 is probably what you would spend on the operations side once you go into that. You're gonna have to have a couple more staff people probably helping you manage this and whatnot. There's also a series of reports and documents that we don't do currently that we have to do at that point. So again, it allows you right now, because you're voluntary, you can say, look, we're gonna do it all, but we have our time period to do it. You're not voluntary, you're on their time period, right? Which is all good, and we're getting ready for that. It's just, again, when you get to that point, it's that additional cost and expense. So we're ready. So 2018, 2021, we're ready to do an expansion. We had an extremely wet year, as we talked about just a second ago. And you can tell, we've got some extra odors out there right now. We've got some issues. The landfill's telling us, right, we're time to expand. We've been putting extra waste in. We put extra C&D waste in, so it's time to go. So this shows you a map of the existing landfill gas system. And again, very comprehensive for the MSW Hills. So MSW Hills here on the south side, And so, let's see if you can see them. Yeah, they're down there. So obviously, a lot of gas components down there, as you can imagine. That's our bellwether, that's where most of our gas is coming from, that's where most of the gas that goes over to the gas energy plant in Flair here comes from this area. The West Hill is a much older area. We still do have gas system components. This is MSW waste that's overlaying with construction and demolition waste that has been placed on top of the East Hill here the last couple of years. This area does have existing MSW. It's very old, very deep. We have a few extra gas system components that are still in place, but we are not extracting MSW, I guess, fuel, landfill gas in this area right now. We are still extracting it from the West Hill, and so this is one area in which we focused on because as the rain has happened and as we filled additional trash and C&D waste here, we've had additional odors and additional gases coming out. So construction demolition waste, it's protrusible, right? You've got some organics, you've got some wood waste, you've got some other items that could be in that. You've also got a lot of inorganics. And so when we look at regulations and gas systems, we're really not required to put in a gas system in a C&D area. But what we've seen over the years is that construction demolition waste do produce gas, right, in some quantity. And unfortunately, sometimes that gas is laden with hydrogen sulfide, and that gas is very odorous. And so even small quantities H2S gas can be extremely pungent. And so what we found in our studies over the past 6 months was that, again, we are producing and have some of this H2S laden gas and some of this additional odor coming out of the C&D area, which again, let's just say a cubic foot of landfill gas coming out of the MSW area versus that, 20 to 30 times the odor, right? So it doesn't take a lot of gas to smell it. So what we're doing, and I'll get to this in a second in our gas system, but what we did is we went up and we did studies and samples. We also did a surface emissions sweep in which we assessed the gases coming off the surface of landfill to try to help us pinpoint where to put gas system components. We also looked at your field data from your technician. We also had our technicians come out. We looked at depth of water data. Water in the Southeast, again, is the #1 contributor to a gas system's problems, right, if you want to say, or your effort of labor, because you're having to put in pumps, you're having to put in systems to dewater landfill. And so what we've done is, again, assess all that data, throw it into a pot, right, and out comes what design we're going to do. And so go ahead and pop us the next screen over. All right, so project goals. So we want to get additional site-wide gas system collections. We want to do it from both those two areas. We don't just want to focus just on the MSW. We do want to try to focus on the C&D area. We want to reduce our site odors. We want to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. And that's one thing that every municipal body, I think, wants to do and needs to do is landfills are one of the largest contributors of greenhouse gas emissions in the world behind cows, right? Cows are #1, landfills #2. And so by these kind of projects and doing them particularly when you're voluntary, you're reducing those greenhouse gas emissions. We want to enhance site safety. Again, landfill gas is combustible, H2S gas is somewhat dangerous, right? So we make sure that we control that gas and make sure we control it for our both our customers and the staff. We always want to increase the volume of gas that we can resell, right? So Santee Cooper is a partner of us, and so we want to make sure that we're maximizing that partnership, and the more gas they can produce to electricity, the more revenue, again, we can get from this collection of gas. And last thing is, as part of this project, was upgrading the conveyance of leachate and landfill gas liquids from the waste mass and from our areas of concern out to the tanks. In one area in which we identified early on was a weak point in the infrastructure. So we broke this again into 2 sections of the targets, I guess, of the gas system. This is the MSW. Again, I consider this more the traditional gas system expansion. And again, it has the highest landfill gas production. And so we always want to go in and first replace components that have exceeded their useful life. And so most landfill gas components are within 3 to 10 years, right, of usable life, because many of them, again, get expended based on silting in, the water going through them, and just the components themselves breaking. And so we identify those. We also want to go into areas of the MSW with no gas system. As we said, it's been 3 years, and so there's definitely areas in which we have no gas system yet. We're going to go into those areas. We want to target areas with excessive gas emissions. And this is, again, when we went through and we did our field testing and we saw where excessive gas was coming from. And so, we're not going to reinvent the wheel. We're going to make sure we go in, and if it's coming out of this crack or hole or this location, we're going to go there, because pathways form within the waste mass. And so we're not going to change those pathways. Those pathways are there. we're gonna go into the gas system components of where that gas is coming out. I'm gonna focus on dewatering. And as you dewater, you open up more pathways in which additional gas can be extracted. And again, you're somewhat using your vacuum to draw the gas where you want it versus where it wants to go. We also see where landfill gas definitely pushes liquid out of a landfill. And so we'll make sure that we're pumping that liquid down as best we can. And the gas system does a great job in pumping. It's probably, it's very close, if not at some sites, equal to what we get out of the leaching system, we get out of the gas wells and their pumping systems. And last thing, we want to maintain landfill operations, make sure, again, we're not causing operations to suffer based on gas system componentry everywhere where those guys would have to dodge it, hit it, and whatnot, so make sure that it limits those impacts. So the C&D hill, a little different, right? We're going to try to increase gas collection from, at least in the West Hill, both what was under the C&D overlay, the old MSW. It's probably been 15, 18 years since we've drilled new wells there, so it's time. So now let's go ahead and we'll punch a well in, see if we can get some gas down below. We're also going to put some perforated pipe in the C&D zone, right? So be able to draw some of that gas out. And we've located 4 gas wells where we believe to be the highest emissions. And again, that was based on that surface emissions testing and locationing, again, where this gas is coming from the most. We're also going to be putting in some horizontal collectors. And so these are, and I'll show you a picture of this in a second, but these are essentially, it's a perforated drain pipe, right, that you put in. And again, it collects gas from a localized area. We backfill that pipe with gravel, and we put vacuum on it, and it's able to localize that. And what's unique about probably the C&D portion of the gas system is that, as I mentioned, the C&D gas has a little more H2S. It's probably not going to be as rich in methane as what we have in the MSW hill. And so for us to combine that fuel with the more rich high BTU fuel from the MSW, it's going to cause us some problems at the plant. It's going to cause us some problems trying to combine that fuel and be able to sell that to Santee Cooper and use that. And so the idea is, let's combust that where it is. And so we're going to be putting in 3 very small blower and flare stations to combust that gas at the C&D locations. I'll show you a picture of that in a second. Go ahead and flip to the next slide. And so this is the full proposed gas system for fiscal year 21. Everything you see there in bright color essentially is going to be a new component. And so you'll see a lot of work up here in the top in the C&D areas. These are the horizontals we just discussed. This is the MSW subtitle D hill, and again, a lot of color down there. This is all brand new over in this section where the freshest MSW waste has been placed. And so this is all new components. So what we did further, right, we keep peeling back the onion. So what we did further was he said, okay, what are items that we need to get done ASAP, right? And this is born based on recent odors and things that have come to a head. And so we said, let's focus on the areas that have this highest concern of this H2S gas. Let's focus on the areas that are the highest concern. At least in the MSW hill, we've noticed that we're a tad bit weak in our gas system expansion this. And so what we did is we said, we're going to put in the horizontals and these small flares. We're going to get our West Hill correct and get its piping and its wells correct. And then we do have a little bit of odor concern and some gas concern down here on the south portion of the subtitle D hill. So there is some extra gases there. And this is not to say that everything else is not unimportant. We're still moving forward with that too. But this has been our expedited focus of staff and mine is to get these sections addressed immediately. So these are some photos. Just again, not sure how many of you have trucked down the landfill and kind of seen some of the stuff that's out there, but this is a typical vertical extraction well. This is what you see above ground. And so below this pipe, it goes down as deep as the landfill is, minus 20 feet or so. And those sections of solid pipe, which this is a PVC well, and that's what most of yours are, but this first 15 to 20 feet would be solid pipe. It would then transition to a perforated pipe section, backfilled by gravel. And then up on top, you got our wellhead. This is how we control how much vacuum is being applied. And so at the blower station, it's sucking vacuum. And so we individually can control and monitor the extraction of gas at each component point using this wellhead. And what you see in this box is pump control. So in this one, these hoses are all the pump air going in and the liquid coming out. And again, for explosion purposes, we use pneumatic systems primarily in landfill gas. You can use electric, but all this is pneumatic. The right-hand shot is a picture of a drill rig. This is typically how we construct these wells. And so again, we have, I think it was 25 to 30 new wells total in this project. So go to the next slide. This shows your horizontal collector photo. Again, this was at your site, put in, I think this was FY 15, I believe. So these are, again, trenches put in. We got this is perforated pipe here. This is high density polyethylene. And then we backfill that with gravel and some felt fabric, and then backfill that in. And again, same principle as the vertical well. We put vacuum on that. It draws gas to it. It also does a really good job collecting liquids. And so on your horizontals, we have pits designed, and we slope essentially up to a French drain. We slope these French drains in, and then we're able to pump the liquids out. And so the idea is to try to keep this as dry as you can while extracting gas. The benefit, as you can see from these, is that there's very little sticking out of the ground. So we can put these in where active waste will fill on top and go back and forth, and you're not going to impact this pipe as much. They're also really good for localized gas extraction in areas where you have odors, right? So you can sit there and say, I've got odors running down this path, and we target these horizontals where that is. And on the previous drawing we showed of the horizontals in the C&D area, we have 8 of these at 500 feet each. So we have 4,000 feet available to us to pinpoint where this odor is coming from. Go to the next slide. This is the last photo I'll show you. So this is what those little small flares would look like. And it's just a miniature version of a much larger flare stack, wind shroud, your piping. Difference on these is, again, very small blower system that's attached to the flare, produces some vacuum. Again, we can localize the combustion. We can move these around. They're portable. We can do a lot more adjustments with these that we don't have the flexibility to do down at the main flare. And again, we're keeping this gas flow a little separate. And again, for a lot of purposes, that makes the most sense. Solar panel here for powering. We're actually powering these based on hardwired electricity versus batteries, but you can do batteries as well. Slide. And so timelines here. So again, our phase 1, we'll call it the critical, but again, they're both critical. But phase 1, we're getting going pretty fast here this month. Construction beginning here early February, if not sooner. And then we're hoping to have all that first phase done by the end of March. And then phase 2, we're getting, bids going out here toward the end of this month. This may accelerate here as far as when bids are due. Probably going to be due sometime in February, with again, construction complete by late May, first part of June. And so that gets everything done as of the end, and I think should be good. That's it. So, any questions?
How much more gas potentially are we going to have to the gen sets? Power from?
Great question. Don't really know exact, right? But based on estimates, you can look at about 10 to 15 SCFM per gas well is a real good estimate additional for all the gas wells putting in the MSW. And I think again, it was something like 25. So, 3 to 400 SCFM would be a good.
So it's a third more potential.
It is, yes. So our target is up over 1,000. And again, that's, I think it's very doable with this. If we strike it rich and hit some gas veins somewhere, then we'll be all high-fiving. So
that might justify another gen set.
Well, what you got is, Mr. Ives, is that you have we put in new wells, but you also got existing wells that are the life is leaving you all the time. So for a while, you're gonna have a peak, and then it's gonna start dragging back down, then you do another expansion, you go back to the peak, and then you come back down. Because these wells sealed in, all these grates in them and the stuff coming out of the landfill will get there and just clog them up. We keep the wells, sometimes the wells will move. Landfill is always moving, it'll move and it'll just shut it down. You can't get the pump out of it, so you can't de-water it. There's all kinds of issues happen. So I didn't want you to think that if we're adding 250 CFMs, that we always gonna have that around, because that's not how it works. Right, Chris?
That's right. I mean, if you look at our gas flows and our models, it's a big stair step up and stair step down, and it's just back and forth. Now, if we budgeted every single year for gas system expansions, that's totally different, right? You can keep up with it. But based on the size site, based on what we need, this 3-year expansion seems reasonable. And again, that may change in the future based on the regulations and what you need to do. But just again, based on what we've seen, I think it's reasonable.
And each well is gonna run you around $5,000–6,000.
That's right.
To replace. We don't replace them even if they quit working until we do the expansion every 3 years.
I'm surprised to see that we're having to treat an area with C&D. Is that because of the trapped underneath the prior
As far as the gas emissions, no, because we have many C&D landfills that have gas emissions on their own without the trapped MSW. I don't know that we're getting a whole lot of gas coming up from that at this point. I think that's still a fine design. We're just seeing, again, all the rainfall the Southeast has had the last couple of years. It has activated every bit of organic material in that C&D waste. If your site took a lot more vegetative waste in the C&D, I don't think you do as much, it's 3 times that. So we have some sites that do take vegetative waste with the C&D combined, and those sites we almost treat just like an MSW hill. We have that much gas coming through.
The odors coming, what it is, the odor coming from the C&D doesn't have a lot of methane gas in it. We may, with these flares that you see, these extra 3 mini flares that we're talking about and stuff, we may end up having to put propane tanks on them to be able to burn the odor, because there may not be enough gas to do it. And if you start taking that gas and mixing it with your regular methane, then you have a problem at the skid. It causes their engines to go down. They have to rebuild them more frequently. Siloxane gets in them. It's just a whole range of issues that happen. So through our conversations, we said, well, let's flare them separately so we don't create issues at the skid, and just handle those separately. And that's what our game plan was.
And there's a very good chance that over the next year, this changes, right? Maybe the weather patterns change, maybe we solve with these horizontals, get more trash on differently. It doesn't all completely go away, but to the level that you're seeing, the major concern goes away. So again, we don't
Probably
wanna
gonna
say this
change
is.
in about 8 days.
Pardon me?
Probably gonna change in about 8 days.
Yeah. There you go. Well, so, you know, we never want to say that what we see right there right now is always a permanent condition. It could change, and it likely will change.
Our staff's instruction to Chris was, back in July, was that we got this gas field expansion budgeted. We want you to focus on odor first, gas second. So we wanted to take down the odor, and that started back in July, and we knew we would have to get more C&D in than we normally do, and other issues and rain, and then you add all that together. So we instructed him to take the odor first as the primary, and that's where you see the first phase. The first phase is to try to get the odor down as quickly as possible and get it down. And then the second phase, it'll help with odor too, but it'll be in the MSW.
Help us understand how we separate the gas from the leachate.
I guess, do a little more definition on that question for me, so what's
Both in liquid form, how we're making sure and assuring that we're separating gas from leachate. Liquid.
So, as far as from when we're trying to extract the gas out, okay, so every gas well, I guess, has a pump system in it, right? And so landfill gas will bubble its way through the liquid, right? And what we try to do there is to keep the water levels in the landfill. This is, I call it entrapped liquid, because the misnomer is that liquid itself, if you measure liquid in a gas well, you think that's the static elevation throughout the entire waste mix. It's not true, right? So if you were to go down to your leachate cleanouts and you have transducers, you know, your requirement there is a much, much lower head amount on top of that liner. And so and that is a true measurement on that liner. If you go down there and look at that, and you walk 100 feet up to your first gas well, and you'll measure the liquid there, and it's gonna be a little higher. And what that is just entrained liquid around that gas well in that waste area itself. Because as we draw vacuum to that waste, that well, we're drawing everything, particles, silts, water, everything. So imagine a blob of liquid kind of surrounding that gas well. And so what we do is, again, we try to keep, again, this liquid pumped down below the perforated pipe in that vertical well or in the horizontal to the point that we can extract the gas. So they're always mixed together. What happens is when the landfill gas does come out to the gas well, it's 100% saturated gas. And so what we do is we run the gas again through a series of pipes back to the whatever control point we're going to. And as it hits low points, we lock the liquid out, right? We make the liquid gas go through a series of bins, we put it through a series of sump locations, and then we collect that liquid. So again, we treat it as in this gas is gonna dump a lot of
We
liquid
have
out.
to treat it the whole distribution line.
We do, the whole way through, yep.
Thank you.
But if you put a well in, you only got a round area, circumference that it collects from. And so you try to get the water out so the gas flows with the water, right?
That's right.
Chris?
That's right.
And it comes to the well. Then the water goes down in the well, the pump takes it out, and then vacuum takes the gas out. We have to tune those. So you can't have too much oxygen, so you gotta make sure your oxygen level's right and your methane level's right, and we're constantly adjusting those every month currently. And then we turn those stats that we get over to Chris, and he does all kinds of analysis on them and stuff like that for us.
Thank you, that helps me understand what the, appreciate it.
One of the major problems we have with complaints is with the smell. And I think we've been discussing this for quite some time to see what we could do to eliminate a certain percentage of that. How well do you think this will do on that score?
Well, from the odors that are related to landfill gas, and, you know, the landfill has odors, right? There are odors in a lot of places, but the landfill gas derived odors, based on our analysis and the testing that we did, if we put this system in those spots, we're probably looking at a 85% reduction in odor from those areas. Gas systems are very effective
That's a
at
high.
removing odors that are related to, you know, gas odors.
Okay.
And one of the things we want to do before we, you know, finalize exactly where some of those components go, is we're going to come out and fine tune it again. We collected data in July, we collected data in October, we collected data in the first part of December. And again, all that was to, again, trying to fine tune this. And so the idea is one last time before the contractor puts shovel to earth, we're going to make sure we get these components in the right spots. And that's really the key to it, is get the component where the gas is coming out and then be able to extract it at a rate that's sufficient. And as Mike said, maybe some fine tuning we gotta do. We gotta add propane to it, we gotta do this or that or whatnot. But, and that's, I guess I'll couch everything I just said with that last statement to say that the dates we have up there are the dates that construction ends. There is still gonna be this tuning and fine tuning and Stephanie's crew doing massaging on everything with it. So typically we like to tune up a gas system about 60 to 90 days to get it, you know, it's a biological system, so we don't want to crank it up to 100% day one. So we slowly tune it up, but there's a process there. And so we should, you know, day one, you should start to see some improvement, but I think over the next 2 or 3 months, you'll start to see a much better improvement. And the idea is, you know, I think in the summertime, it has to be worse odors, right? You're out in your backyard grilling. You don't want to smell landfill. And so the idea is hopefully by July 4th weekend, right, we have much fewer odors coming off the site.
I would assume if we didn't hit some of the good pockets of gas, that would be difficult to move if impossible.
As far as move the gas or move
Move
the
well,
wells, well, yes, so we design, most gas wells are designed for a certain radius, as Mike was saying. There's a radius you put in there. So you have some flex with those. The pinpointed gas system components I was wanting are those horizontals, but yes, you're not gonna be able to move those. But the good thing is, if we miss one, right? So the good thing is we have 2 phases. So first phase is critical. We go in there and we put what we think we need in now. Second phase, I have a second group coming back out, and those guys can adjust and add. We have contingency funds for that. If that doesn't work and we still have some odors, we can always add more, right? Again, it's a gas system is a layered solution that you add to it. I am 95% sure this is gonna work fine. And so again, we wouldn't have designed it if we didn't. But again, there always is something you could add later if you had to. And again, I think every year we have to tweak and do small changes. But in this case, you know, we're gonna get the areas covered. We've gone above and beyond, I think, on this design.
about how long do these last, the wells last, before you would need to replace them?
That's a great question. So your site is unfortunately short time period because of your liquid and because of your waste consistency. I often use you as an example to other sites, just as a generality, to say sites at the coast, right? Your waste stream coming in is, you know, I'll just say, you know, a lot of shrimp skins and beer and food, right? Your food waste is very high, and that food waste breaks down quickly, and it does produce a higher black silt that is drawn to the gas wells. And we don't see this on any sites except sites that are near more food waste areas. If your waste mix was a little more commercial or industrial, a little more paper, things like that, it wouldn't break down as much. So unfortunately, because of that mixture, we see that you have a phenomenal production of gas almost immediately, right? Your trash goes in and we start to see gas being produced, but we also see where our gas components by and large have a decline, and that's why we have this 3-year look back. And if we go back to one of the slides, we don't have to do that, but you'll see there's many gas wells where we were redrilling in your existing area. Some of those were just put in 3 years ago. Some of those were 6 years ago. The average is 10 to 15 years on most budgets for most normal landfills. So you are, again, under that average, I would say, by quite a few years. But But again, I think there's ways to explain that.
We have one area of the landfill, up at the top, where up at the very top of the hill, that they sealed in right regularly. There's about 3 or 4 of them there. When you pull them out, you clean the pumps more frequently, and they sealed in more quickly. They were put in last time, I think, when we did some work on them this time.
And
So it's based on what's in that area of the landfill, and how much of what it is in that
what it
area.
is, and then how much you're pumping too. And again, we don't want to stop pumping. It's critical to keep these things going. I think it helps the whole landfill system to work better the more we pump. You know, there are some sites that limit their pumping on trying to keep their gas wells. I don't agree with that approach. I think you guys got a good approach with keeping your pumping going to the maximum ability, because again, a dry waste mass helps everybody, right? It helps you collect the most gas, plus it helps with your breakouts and other issues on the surface slopes. So again, I think it's to your benefit to keep pumping.
What kind of maintenance, would we be looking at, and what kind of warranty do you have?
So the warranty on the flare stations or just the gas system itself? Or both? So everything's 1 year typically in the industry as far as the warranties on those. That's common, and that should be sufficient as far as landfills are unfortunately have a lot of settlement, differential settlement, things go on, things move, and so it's harder to guarantee a lot of construction beyond a year. The maintenance on those, essentially you have a staff, you know, maintains it per the regulations and per typical industry standards. We've trained a lot of your guys. I would say as your landfill gets larger, you know, again, I've advocated this to staff a couple times, you probably need more staff dedicated to your gas system. Again, it's a lot of effort out there with pumps, a lot of effort out there with gas wells. And as you, again, get up there, and I think, you know, it's almost gonna be mandatory once you get to this regulatory stage to increase that staff. But at this point, you're right there at it. And on flare stations and things like that, again, it's just basic maintenance, basic things that your guys currently do on the larger flares. I don't think there's anything new for them to do there.
You're saying right now what we're doing is actually not mandatory.
From the regulations, no, exactly. Now, you have a flare that's in your air permit. So there are certain documents and data you have to maintain per your air permit to maintain that flare. What is not mandatory is how we expand this gas system, right? So we can expand it in ways that are beneficial to us, beneficial to collecting odors. If it was required by regulation, then you have, as waste gets older, what it's called as a 2-year, 5-year rule, in which as waste exceeds 2 years in age, you have to put in gas system in that area to control the gas emissions per a designer. And we'd have to come up with what's called a design plan that would include our master build-out plans for the entire facility, and how we intend on expanding this within certain time periods and meet that. And then again, as I mentioned earlier, you have this immediate response based on every month's data collection. So you have to look at your data. We currently look at it, but more or less it's looked at for, you know, catastrophic problems, making sure we're collecting enough gas. You would have to layer on top of that additional review based on its oxygen, pressure, temperature, different metrics you're looking at. And as those fail the metrics, right, then you have to say, okay, I have a certain timeline to be able to fix those wells. It's short. It's designed to be short, right? It's designed to make you kick you in the hiney to move along. And so sometimes that's an expensive fix, right? Things that maybe don't need to be fixed in 15 days or 30 days, but yet you have to, right? So now we have a luxury of time to be able to go back and think about it, add it to our next expansion, but yet it's not critical, but it becomes critical.
But if you went up under the federal regs, they give you the timelines when you got to do certain things, and how many wells you gotta have based on how much waste you got and how old it is, and
That's right.
all of that stuff. So the longer we can stay out of that reg, the better off we'll be.
Right. Are there any other questions? Thank you, sir. I have one for you, Mike. Are we going to have to hire any new employees to work with this system?
Well, we currently have one, and we've been told a couple of times that he's maxed out. But we pull people from other places currently because you can't you can't hire a quarter of an employee. Sometimes when we get behind or things are not running just right, we call Chris. he sends his group in and they come in and help us get everything back to where it needs to be and move forward with it. So rather than hire somebody, once, twice a year, we get Chris to come in when we're getting a little on behind. You know, because things fail, and you get a bunch of things failing at the same time, you really ain't got a lot of manpower to deal with it. And that's when we hire a subcontractor to come in and help us out.
Okay, so you have the subcontractors, whatever in your budget, and you don't think we're at the point we need another employee?
Not currently. I don't think it's gonna be long as it has been, but I think it's, all right now.
Okay.
This was a commercial. You asked a yes or no question. I think we're gonna have to hire
Eventually.
other people. Stephanie's off with what's going on. I'm not gonna say it's gonna be in this year's budget, but, I think we planned for it. We've been planning for it every 3 years, every so often, even without the federal stick. But I think we kept up with it, and, we'll continue to do it, but this is sort of a technical field. It's just not, dig a hole and put a pipe in and it's bulletproof.
Yeah. Well, I always like it when we go above regulations. I don't think a lot of times regulations solve the problem for the public. And I think this is one of the number one things that the public has had a problem with. And so therefore, I like the solution. I think we need to have it anyway, whether it is regulated, that we need it at this time. And I think that is to help the public deal with the problem they have here with that. So I'm really pleased. And Chris, I'm really pleased that you will take your time to come back here and help us when we need it. Thank you. Any other questions regarding this issue? Then we will go to the joint use road agreement. Mr. Knight.
Thank you, ma'am. This project, we've been working with the county on this, project for, I guess, 2 months or so. And I won't get into it, but we got Jason Thompson with the counties here in Bristol with, Brigman Company. And, all this is taking place on 1187. There's the maps you'll see, the county purchase of this piece of property from the Virginia group. There's some roads on our property, there's some roads on their property, there's some roads that kind of between us. But this is kind of we put in what's been in place is kind of gentleman agreements along and along, but this is kind of putting it on paper. And I think the whole intent is the county is going to turn their properties over to the wildlife department for management. And this project will transfer on to the wildlife department, and I'll turn it over to Tracy. You want to?
Either way, it's on.
And I have the joint use agreement.
We do.
You got one?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
she passed them around.
Okay.
Yes, we got maps.
We've got some larger maps if y'all want, instead of reading 8.5 by 11. So if y'all are comfortable with what you got there. I am Jason Thompson with Horry County Government. I manage the Rise 3 program for the county, and part of my duties was looking for some wetland credits, as we got Rise 3 started. So that's where we have went and purchased what we call the Riverstone Tract. Just to give you a little background, we purchased it was about 3,700 acres, 3,687. So our intent is to ultimately develop our own wetlands bank to support infrastructure within Horry County. Any of you been to a council meeting, that's the first thing somebody hollers is, we need more infrastructure to be in place before expansions take place. So we're here to push the wetlands bank forward. What we have developed is a joint use agreement on the road system around internally and on the external parts of the property. If you will look at the first map that's titled Exhibit A in your package, Brett has gone and developed what is called 4 segments of roadway. The first segment begins out on International Drive and it runs down to a proposed gate at the corner, basically where the timber of y'all's property meets into our property. There'll be a gate there. Segment 2 is really a joint use between all parties that leaves internally from our property, crosses over y'all's property, and then gets back into our property. Segment 3 is totally on y'all's property, and that's close to the Clear Pond development that was talked about earlier. So it runs from the property line at Clear Pond back into our property line, which is also a drainage ditch that runs internally. Segment 4 is totally on Horry County, and it runs from the gated portion there behind Clear Pond back into segment 2. Now, saying all this, I think Danny alluded to it, we need a little bit of authority to go on y'all's property. Y'all need a little bit of authority to come on our property. It's been a gentleman's agreement in the past, including DNR. I think Mr. Danny can expand a little further, but y'all have a wildlife monitoring agreement in place currently with DNR. So what we're trying to do is finalize, formalize, and get all the parties on the same page. So that's kind of where we're at and how the segments come up into place. I will take any questions that y'all have, probably let Britt answer them. He's more of the one that developed the document. But the document has been reviewed by Horry County, sent over to Solid Waste Authority for some edits. And I think what y'all have in front of y'all today is the document that has, the most recent document that has been edited by SWA. What we're hoping to accomplish here today is to get a concurrence on the document so that we can go back, Horry County can go back and have formal conversation with DNR so that they are comfortable with the document along with y'all and us. So I will turn the floor.
Yes.
I have a question for Danny. My reading of this agreement is it begins February 1st, but there's no priority for usage of the roadways. We have a project that's currently underway that's very time constrained, and I just don't want there to be a conflict. We've never had a conflict with the county that I'm aware of. We have enjoyed a happy relationship. I just want to make sure that we need priority over the road network we're just putting in.
Well, we've discussed that, and it, kind of laid out that we keep the roads in condition that we need to do our work. And some of the areas will not be involved in public. It'll just be management, just be a game warden going or somebody looking that's got a key to the gate.
There's going to be some timbering operations
If
too.
we give it to it. So we in the timbering, we in the 3 years of dirt. We'll always be hauling dirt from back there. Everybody knows that. And no, we're not gonna cut ourselves off.
Just want to make sure all of us understand that.
Yeah, and to further elaborate, I don't know that we'll actually have a signed, sealed, and delivered contract between all parties until approval of the actual mitigation thing. Right now.
Because the date in here is February 1st, but it could take much.
Yeah, so we're probably, we're hoping first quarter, but it's definitely gonna be end of first quarter to begin of second quarter before final approval.
Which will push it into that summer timeframe. But if you'll flip over to the blow-up sheet number 2, that really defines the segment that you were talking about earlier. The cyan segment 2, that's the part that we have worked with Danny and Mike over to really limit what is described in the agreement to be foot traffic, horse traffic, motorized, vehicular traffic, motorized will be very limited on this section, if not non-existent.
This is section 2?
Section 2, which is the Cyan Code.
Yeah.
That's the portion that we're really concentrating for internal movement on the Riverstone track. So we understood and we heard y'all when we were working with Danny and Mike. Segment 1 is gonna be limited, like Danny said, to probably a game board with full-size vehicles. But in the agreement, one thing that we had to work out, kind of massage back and forth, was who was gonna be responsible for maintenance of the road. As Danny alluded, y'all are hauling dirt out constantly. If you tear the road up, you mess the road up, you fix it. And that's the same thing on our property. During the 6 years that we're doing our wetlands bank, the uplift, and I want to make clear that this is at least a 6-year process for us. So before we turn it over to the final property owner, or holder, property owner holder, will be 6 years. So that whole time, if we're doing some timbering operation in there, and we mess up the roads, then Horry County's responsible. And that's kind of what we discussed with Danny. We didn't want Horry County to be totally responsible. We didn't want Solid Waste Authority to be totally responsible. If you mess it up, you fix it. So, any other questions?
Is there a problem with you accessing your land today without that, without this?
So currently, the Horry County property can be accessed from International Drive in 2 different areas. One is full access, another is actual, we're working on the same path with Land Bank, cell tower site on the southeasternmost. So we're working the same path there, and then we have to go across several properties there. The most critical component of this is that segment 2 that does provide us access on that small corner. And just in general, the segments that are in red, those will be a joint use between Horry County, Solid Waste Authority, and DNR. Then obviously DNR and Solid Waste Authority, once Horry County has transferred to DNR. The cyan is the only of these 4 segments that allows public access to the property. That's the only one that will allow public.
Which one's that? Let me maybe calm the waters a little bit on this. And I never did know what color this is, because I'm gonna say it's blue.
Say blue.
Sorry.
Yeah. Now, I've discussed with Steve Gosnell prior to this about trading some property. And the trade would start where you see that gate on red and the blue. And it would go down the run of that swamp. And we would trade property for some property up here behind the Murph that we've been wanting all along. And if there's not enough property to trade property for property, then the county will have to buy a portion to make it up down here. And that will take the blue out of the question.
Right now, it's the only access they have to International Drive.
Yeah, now they've got access that comes in that blue back out to International, but it is a kind of a floppy road today. And you've got one that comes in behind the Murph at that gate on red up from the Murph. There's a road through there. And that's the reason that gate's there. But hopefully, we can work out with the county a land swap down here along this swamp line that would take that blue out of the question. That blue would then be all on them. But we would still have this agreement that we could get back around here to our property. They'd have to give us a key to their gate. And that can happen based on this estimate right here.
Okay. Well, let me just say, and I'm sure Mr. Knight knows, as we discussed, through different things in the last 8 years, buying and selling and giving away property gives me a little bit of heartburn. I understand the need to work with the county and DNR and any organization that's out there. That's not a problem, or allowing us and you to get back and forth to your property to do the things that we do on it today. It concerns me when we start to make an agreement where we could lose total control of some of our infrastructure. In the year 2040, the Solid Waste Authority may need to change roads or part of the 1187 to actually meet permitting requirements. We don't know what the future holds. The county may as well. DNR may as well. All property, of course, is a financial asset. So I guess, to me, reading this, some of the things that really concern me in some of these sections, it says parties, and that means the other two, as well as the Solid Waste Authority, may grant for public use. We have voted in times past until the Solid Waste Authority has finished. There will not be horseback riding, and there will not be four-wheeling, and because of the liabilities to the Solid Waste Authority and the county, and all of those things. And this board voted a few years ago to deny that kind of access. And if we do it for one, we should do it for everyone. This property will be used, I feel sure, in the future for recreation and for the county and for the public, and it should be. But at the time, we have had some serious problems with people unauthorized doing these things. So we voted not to do any of that for public use, but it's written in here that the parties may grant for public use for bikes, vehicles, foot, or other lawful means. There are a lot of lawful means that could be going around that none of us may anticipate anyone choosing to do today, but they may choose to do that 3 to 5 or 7 years from now. We voted not to do that. A lot of this to me is vague wording, and I don't even know what mitigation activities in its entirety would be. The other thing that causes me a lot of heartburn is if a public highway is established. Why would that be put in there? I don't even know why we would consider putting a public highway for the public to use to access any of these properties where we are doing landfilling and a lot of construction work. So for me to consider the implications of a public highway or any lawful endeavor decided by anyone other than the Solid Waste Authority, I have a serious problem with deciding to vote to do that.
Let me say this, there is a map, old map, that shows a connection road from, what's the road? Clear Pond, Garner Lacey. Tying Garner Lacey into Highway 9. That's across 1187. Not the only possibility, or to get to international. Now, we don't really know what's going to happen. Who's going to be in charge? But I think that just, it pretty much says that if the road built across there, then the Solid Waste Authority is not going to be responsible for maintaining a 4-lane highway.
The document doesn't necessarily promote the road, it's just saying in the event the road comes through there, they still want to be able to negotiate access. And as far as I think you were maybe referring to the latter part of item 3, where it says parties may grant use of the road identified as segment 2. The public use will only be They will only cross that very small corner if you look on that blue road. It will not, and there will be a gate, just north of that to keep anybody out of the solid waste authority property. So, them sharing that 558-foot segment, it will not allow them access to any of your property other than, it will be restricted to that road bed only.
And I don't know if your document was edited or not, but the edit includes SWA and parties has been omitted.
Right.
Yeah.
Do any of the other board members have any questions or comments?
You work for Lee County, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Who's here to represent DNR?
Nobody.
Ain't nobody here to represent them. They're gonna be a party to this.
They've taken the position that they not a party to the document itself. That's between us. Now, it will be eventually transferred over. So what we're attempting to do, us get satisfied first between the county and the board. And then we'll take it to DNR and see what they say. But this crowd is well aware of positions that some people have taken in the past on stuff. And this document here is way different than the first one we did, because the first one says that basically they could be hunting and horses, everything. And like I say, there'll be a blue gate right there on that blue street that they can't get to us. We can get through the gate to get over here to our property, the way it is right now.
Are you talking about property on section 3?
Segment 3 is a portion of land that is owned by the SWA.
I guess what my question was where I was going, how much skin in the game is DNR gonna have, Danny?
You what now?
How much skin in the game is DNR gonna have?
Well, probably not a whole lot. They're gonna inherit, how many acres?
3,687.
3,600 acres more
Right.
that they gonna gain.
That's from the wetland mitigation.
From the Riverstone Tract.
Riverstone,
There's some property.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
At the end of the 6 years, at the end of the 6 years is when that transfer will ultimately happen.
Go to DNR.
We think that right now, there's no formal document in place.
If it don't happen in 6 years, what's gonna happen?
If it don't happen in 6 years because of other things, then it retains to Horry County until we find a third-party owner that will maintain the property.
Okay.
And that litigation is on this TMS 152-01031.
Yes, yes, sir.
Now, Danny has been talking about doing a land swap. Are y'all able to do that? Are y'all able to swap portion of the land down there behind the MRF?
Yeah, we have
To gain-
excluded, if you look up in the northern part behind the Murph, you
Mhm.
see that little green triangle? We specifically excluded that from the mitigation proposal for those purposes.
Paper, are you on?
Yeah.
Exhibit A,
Yeah, I'm looking at exhibit A. So what triangle are you talking about?
that's the Murph facility right here.
Yes, sir.
So the white line is the limits of our wetland bank, proposed limits.
Mm-hmm.
So this triangle in here
You left over.
is what we left out for a potential swap between this parcel down here.
The boundary line is implying, some boundary lines implying this conveyance.
Correct, that is not a true boundary line, that is a boundary line of the wetlands bank.
Excellent, thank you.
Sorry about that.
Thank you for
I thought I
pointing that
knew that.
out. Thank you.
white line on here, that's the width of the limit for the wetland pipe. This piece here, this triangular piece, is what Mr. Knight was talking about, land swap, for his land loss.
How much on it?
How many acres?
I think it's 12,
I think it was 12, it was 12 acres.
And how much is over on the other one?
oh geez. The other one was larger, the swap, but it is, the majority of it is well. I think the upland ratio was, there were more uplands on the property that y'all would be, pertaining, and there was less on ours. Ours is mostly wetland, and just from a logistics standpoint, it makes sense for that corner of that road, and then that segment 3 that really doesn't provide a lot of access on y'all's property. It was more of a logistics standpoint from us.
And how that trade would go down is that, of course, the board would have to agree to it. It had to go to county council for approval, because they passed a ruling that we couldn't sell or buy property without their approval. So, and that's what I've told Steve. If they have to put cash in to make up the difference, then it's gonna have to be based on some appraised value, before we could present it to y'all and go down there and face county council with $100 an acre.
Just for clarification, the property that we're talking about that y'all currently own will be none of the uplands that you see where that's I guess that's the debris field that was used a couple of years ago. We would stay in the wetland part, the swamp part. None of your uplands in that area was even looked at or considered for the land swap. Everything was wet.
And two, also, something I'd like to point out is the end result of the mitigation bank, and this joint use agreement will end up with much better gates on all of the properties, because I can assure you that there is quite a bit of trespassing on both, and it's coming from both. The trespassing is shared. So, one big positive is that one, DNR will be monitoring their property, but at the same time yours, and all of the entry points possible now from Clear Pond and all of your development here will be gated and protected much more efficiently.
As I said, I still don't like vague language where 3 people get to make up their mind about something and it not being us. I have a problem with the vague language of, you may decide this and you may decide that, we may have a public road, we may have that. That's a problem for me.
But currently, we have no agreement at all, except the gentleman's
That's
discussion.
okay with me.
I think this is a positive step to codify our agreement. I think this is a positive
I
step.
think for me to support it, they'd have to rewrite the language.
Do the land swap.
Appreciate your involvement in this project.
Yes, sir. We appreciate the opportunity to come discuss it with you.
Danny, is there anything, I'm assuming everybody's asked their questions of these 2 gentlemen. Is there anything else we need to
I don't
do?
know anything, we'll just have to take the document and see what specific in this red line when the kind of question in your mind and see.
Well, I'm assuming the board will see it at the next board meeting, won't it? Okay. That'll be fine. That'll be fine. And I appreciate that, and I can see the need to be more cohesive for you.
So our land was in stock right here.
And I'm sure something at some point would be worked out to that end. And we can all be happy with it.
Wants to be good neighbors with Overy County, you want to be
Yeah.
good neighbors with DNR. We all want to be one big family.
That's all we can get.
And that makes a lot of sense to do it that way, instead of, having a lot of arguing and going back and forth. I just don't care for that.
But the red line part was, the red line was done by Henrietta Gold.
Okay.
Yes.
That mitigation project sure is a terrific project.
Yes, congratulations on that
This is just a
mitigation, y'all did an
wonderful
excellent job.
Opportunity for the county.
Yeah.
Still working on it.
Our getting
All
involved
the
in
time.
that.
We're excited about it.
Yeah.
We're getting close to the finish line. We're ready to hop over and start actually doing work, you know, improvements and taking a lot of, I guess, pressure off of the community, you know, with what's going on with the other properties around us, adjacent to us. Some of them are really thinking that we're still gonna put development, but that's not the case.
Yeah,
So when we
and I
cross
think
the
that's
finish line,
wonderful.
As soon as we cross the finish line with the MBI and our submittal, and it turns into a wetlands bank, and it's locked up perpetually. Mr. Johnson?
And I might be wrong on the time frame here, you might have to correct me, but I'm gonna ask the question. If we got 6 years before you'll finish product on the wetland litigation, we not use that same time frame to get this land swap figured out? And then,
We've actually got
if we
two-
can do that, then that's going to solve a lot of this right here, right?
Correct,
Thank you.
there's actually two issues on the table. We were here to discuss the joint use road agreement. The land swap was introduced because that's something we got to work with over the next couple of years.
Yeah,
That's not something we need by February to submit our MBI to the IRT. So you're correct, we got time.
so you got to have this joint use to submit in your paperwork. Is
We
that what I
need-
just heard, or?
Sarah, go ahead.
Yeah, so right now, we're on the cuff of submitting our actual mitigation banking instrument. It is the final, so we've already submitted a prospectus that all of the agencies have reviewed and provided us feedback and basically gave us a thumbs up on our concept. Then they put it back in our hands to put together an ironclad document that literally documents everything. And so the joint use agreement will need to be ironed out and signed prior to approval, because DNR is not only, they serve two roles in this. They are the long-term management component, and they are also one of the approving agencies. So our mitigation banking instrument is approved by the Corps. They're the sole authority, and then in addition to the Corps, you've got Fish and Wildlife, EPA, DNR, Forest Commission. All of those will also be signature authorities of it. So the joint use agreement, and DNR's goal is to just make sure simply that they've got all the proper access. That's their skin in the game. They don't want to inherit property that they can't properly access for management. Most of the management that will occur, like the timber harvesting, that will be under the supervision of Horry County. When DNR inherits the property, we'll have 5 to 6 years as Horry County to successfully complete what we proposed. At the end of that 5 or 6 years, the agencies will review it, give us a thumbs up, and at that point, it'll be transferred to DNR. Then DNR will simply manage what we put in place.
Well, I only have one question, but I'm gonna make it two. You keep talking about timber harvesting, do you have a game plan there? Do you foresee something in the future, or?
We do, so the goal of this mitigation bank is to enhance that ecosystem and open up the canopy to the forest, to the floor, and basically give us more diversity from an herbaceous standpoint. There are some areas that have very dense timber, but because this tract does not have a lot of road improvements, we won't be putting any roads in, so we're very limited. I mean, our timber harvesting, it's not gonna be clear cuts, it's gonna be minor thinning to promote our goal, and it'll be really, for the most part, weather permitting. It could be a one and done kind of thing, but it's not gonna be that way, because we know what the weather's shown us in the last 5 years. So we're gonna accomplish all the timber harvesting activities, weather permitting, but we're talking maybe a tenth of that tract that will have some thinning.
For management purposes.
Are y'all gonna have to do the thumb run?
Yes.
Basically, you can get it thin so you can start control burning it, basically is what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
All right, my second question is, me and Mike actually rode back through there a couple, 2, 3 weeks ago, and, seen a bunch of that stuff firsthand. And I read the document. That land back there, I agree with you, Ms. Pam, Ms. Chairwoman, but that land back there in section 2 and section 3, I don't see where it does us any good other than us having to continue cleaning it and picking up trash. And once the public gets on it, we talked about it, it could be a hassle too. I would like, I know it's a 6-year process, and I probably won't be on the board in 6 years, but Danny, you're gonna retire in 3, so we, 33, but I see where all this is going, but I think as the landfill, you know, obviously, the land behind the MRF is a lot more valuable to us, and the land in the swamp is a lot more valuable than natural resources, which is what you're trying to create. And this document is not guaranteeing any of that to happen. What can be done there, if anything?
Well, they pushing the button.
They gotta push the button, because they gotta get this document.
They pushing the button on that.
Yes.
We've been kind of pushing the button on the property behind the MRF.
Yeah.
So I can pledge to you, we're gonna push that pretty quick. But I didn't wanna get hung up on the blue part, because that is gonna be part of the swap.
I understand.
And then we're out of the picture, kinda on that right away from International to get around.
I reckon what I'm saying, Danny, is I have no heartburn over making the move. But I think right now, you know, how can we do this other than a gentleman's handshake, say, hey, we're gonna get through this permitting process with you quickly, but I think your next line of action needs to be, let's get this land swap.
I think we advised the board at the board meeting, and then somebody got to say, well, Danny, we want y'all to push the issue on the swap.
And I might be outvoted, I'm just saying.
I know, we've been talking about that land behind the MRF.
And that's what I told Mike, now's a good time for leverage, you know, now's a good time to make a,
Yeah, we don't need to lose the leverage that you won't get.
we don't need a piece of property back there that, you know, thumb sticking out, that we can't never do nothing with.
But we don't need to lose the leverage to get what we want.
Absolutely.
None of that is.
So we all on the same page?
Yes.
Okay.
It's not.
Not been presented, yeah. And like Danny said, we actually started a joint use road agreement with Riverstone under their ownership back in 2017, going down the same path, because there was a gentleman's handshake and trying to establish that with them, and even started the land swap discussions with Riverstone as well.
We went to Richmond. We asked for a permit to put a better road back to the 100 acres.
Yes, sir.
And we thought the road went across the property line. So we went to the court to move the road over on us. The court said, you got a perfectly good road in there, you work out an agreement with the county.
That's what I just showed you, ain't it?
With the you work out an agreement with the property owner. So we loaded up and went to Richmond, and I thought we was going to a sawmill camp, and it was on the top floor of the bank building in Richmond with Riverstone. And we drafted up a joint use agreement, but I don't think we ever signed it. But, the agreement's been worked on, the property trade's been talked about. And halfway between them two, there was a gun range deal, and then horses came up, and y'all voted no horses, no public. So there's a lot of talk been over there, but they need the document completed in a timely fashion.
And they're already showing the shifted boundary line on their plat, so that's
Yeah, that's what
in our favor.
that's exactly what I just drawed out to Mike, since we got that new road coming in, where the borrow beds is at, from that first gate. back to the blue section, that whole section of road, signing over them, so we're not in a joint agreement. And then we got our new access all enclosed indoor, which that would be something we would need to look at after this meeting, we kind of, more sort of
I
round
don't wanna
table.
give up the trade secrets, because to me, you probably say, Danny, to get this agreement done, let's put a line on here where the property's gonna be traded.
That's right.
And we'll trade, titles
Yeah,
when we sign the document.
that's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And one more thing, I don't know if, that I point out is this is for existing road beds from 15 foot to the center line of the road on each
Yeah,
side.
the whole road. Right, we don't have
So
the
it's almost
access,
30 foot.
because we still have access from this gate. Yeah.
I think we understand the deal.
Okay? Any more questions?
No, sir.
We don't, do you have any?
We don't, we
Okay.
appreciate the opportunity to come and
Let's
discuss
check
it.
and give us the land, that's good.
Can you, when's our next board meeting? And are we presenting this at the next board meeting?
January 27th.
Can you, I don't know who would handle that, but can y'all put this, I don't know you got it on this land map, can you draw out the, I know you got a white line there.
We actually have an exhibit,
Yeah,
somewhere that shows that potential
The
swap.
I
trade.
wanna see our property versus your property, and then maybe what the potential land swap areas is, and go from there.
We can do that. I wanna talk to you about where that line's gonna run in the swamp. Getting over there and seeing where everything is, I got kind of an idea on that. But yeah, we'll have your map showing the difference in their property, our property, and what we'll end up with.
Wait,
Thanks, sirs.
Thank you.
Okay, roundtable discussion. Does anybody have anything for roundtable discussion? I do. One of the citizens had sent me an article on styrofoam and some people being able to process that. And I know that we have looked at that in the past. I have when we went to conventions, and I know a couple of the board members before I got here had. And I had sent you that article, so if you would like to comment on some of that, Mr. Bezen, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, we've looked at that several times over the years. You know, I've been here 13 years, and those 13 years probably happened within the first year of Mr. Hardy, Chairman Hardy at the time. He wanted me to look into it, and I looked into it and checked onto it. It takes a lot of storage capacity to store styrofoam. Because of its blowing capacity and it being so light, you need
It's
a building.
injected air, I mean,
Yeah.
it's just polystyrene with
You have
injected
to,
air.
you have to have somewhere to store it. And when we looked at all the numbers and finances of it, we just couldn't see a way to make it work by the time you got the money out of it. And I know a lot of times we don't do that. We don't look at dollars compared to it.
But it's a scourge coming in because it doesn't weigh anything going across the scale house, but its volume is larger than polystyrene, and we're having to bury it.
Yeah.
We're not getting a lot of money for it, but yet we're burying it, and it does take up more space than it actually
And
weighs.
they're not paying freight because it's so light.
It's one of those things we keep researching, and then we've even looked at based on our waste analysis report to how much styrofoam is in the landfill. And you'd have to get about all of it out to make it worth it, and, you know,
And a lot of the styrofoam has to do with food and so forth, and how would that
it becomes
process,
contaminated food.
it'd be contaminated
Yeah,
too?
so, and they don't want it contaminated. What they do is basically melt it, make it into pellets, then you put it in bags. Well, you can't sell it till you get a full truckload of it. And it takes a lot to even get a truckload, because you got to talk about 20 tons, 40,000 pounds. And think of 40,000 pounds of styrofoam, probably you could put that much in the building, all these rooms are full.
You need a manufacturing process that uses a lot of it for packing material.
Distribution centers is big time on it. So when you go to Walmart, distribution centers, those kind of places, they have them in there. Because they use a lot of that packaging.
Who do they sell the pellets to? Do you know?
I don't.
Planks, like the people. that
Oh,
make
yeah,
them.
to do that.
We would just put it out to bid like we would anything else if we had it.
Okay.
Just, it works real well, distribution.
What would the new robotics that we did, I know we have blowers for paper, would it actually blow it out if it wasn't put in people's bags and thrown in the landfill? What does it do with that when it comes through that?
Goes right out, and because it's so light and fluffy,
Yeah.
it just beats it all to pieces and it ends up into the glass.
Okay.
And we looked at, Stericycle buys it, and has an operating agreement with Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
Have we looked at any process for just pulling it out just to let them have it?
Yeah. No, we have not.
What-
We can definitely look
You
into
talking about pulling the styrofoam out?
Just pull it out,
Yeah. I'd
let them have
like
it, if they'll transport it.
yeah, if they wanted it and we had enough, and wouldn't hurt to ask them, let's put it
But I'm
that
willing
way.
to do an operating agreement with Chick-fil-A. We can guarantee a certain volume, because it's plentiful. But Publix is the only other agency that's collecting, they'll collect the
and they
equity.
shipping it back to their distribution center now.
Okay. Anyone else have anything for roundtable discussion? Okay, if anyone has anything they would like to put on our next operations meeting, let me know. That will be in March. So if there's any issue you need to know about, discuss, or want to see, let me know, and we will put that on our agenda. If not, I will, Mr. Knight.
What do you want on the next council, board agenda based on this agreement? How you want that to go to the board?
I'd like to see the property lines. I'd like to see the amount that you want behind the MRF versus what they're getting. And I'd also like to see a comparison, and I'll show you this map here that I just showed Mike, where
I
we
think
looked
that
at.
has to be discussed under committee, and then you'll have for board approval.
Okay, we still are in the committee meeting, is that?
I mean, in the board package and stuff, you'll have a section for committee reports and stuff.
Okay, then I will tell them what we discussed. In
Yes,
other
and
words,
what
we're not gonna vote
recommendation.
to pass that or not, it's just gonna be on the next agenda.
Yes, ma'am, and you can have, for board recommendation.
Okay, but Mr. Johnson basically, I think, was answering Mr. Knight's, question about what you would like to see him bring to the board for you to be able to.
If that topic's gonna come up of the land swap, we need to have a packet that includes that information.
For the board meeting, we can do that.
Okay.
I would concur that we should put that in our package.
And it'll go out before the meeting, and then we
Right.
we can talk to you
Yeah.
about the process.
If they need this sometime in February, I would assume it's before our February meeting. Therefore,
We need to finalize it.
we need to finalize it, so you need to have our concerns. Were there any more concerns you had, Mr. Johnson?
No, ma'am, I just want to see the property lines and the totals.
Okay, Mr. Berry, were there any concerns you would have? Mr. Ives?
Yeah, I was gonna talk to Danny and Mike about having an area map. I wasn't aware how close we were to Clear Pond. I was aware of the development on Highway 90. We need an area map so that we can
So,
take time.
and we're gonna take some drone pictures of Wild Wing and the
Oh,
Clear
good.
Pond,
Yes,
and
that way we can see.
yeah.
And I would like to clean up some of the vague language that's in there as well.
At one corner of our property, like Danny said, you could throw a rock and it wouldn't build.
I'd like to know how close that is, just for my own reference. Thank you.
Well, I can tell you, if you're driving on that road right there, you can see the house top.
Oh, yeah, that's Highway 90.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When Mr. Johnson and I rode back there, I showed him Clear Pond, because when you go there, the Clear Pond house is right there.
There's Clear Pond right there.
Right.
And they're still building closer to us. There's still, what, another 60 acres in there they're gonna develop then?
Looks like it.
Okay. Since, Mr. Schwarzkopf is here, I'm gonna break with a little tradition and ask him if there's anything he would like to say concerning this, or any issues he would like to.
My only concern is that at the next board meeting, we've got pictures up on the screen so we could give a good view of what's happening. And also that someplace in the administrative budget, we find a couple of dollars so we can buy some pointers that work. I realized that many years ago, the pointers were taken off the wings and all the other things because kids were chasing airplanes with them, but maybe we might be able to find some pointers that we can actually work.
Okay. Thanks, sir. If there isn't anything else we need to discuss, I will accept the motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. So moved. We are adjourned. Thank you, gentlemen.